Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Lily was an only child in the family, and according to many people, such children grow up to be selfish individuals. However, Lily grew up to be a diligent child. Her parents brought up their daughter in an authoritarian style. Her mother and father combined support and attention to the child, but at the same time prevarication and discipline. She was grateful to her relatives for this and did not understand at the age of 14 why her peers criticized her own parents. In this regard, the girl's classmates did not understand and considered it a little strange. When Lily was in the 11th grade, she first fell in love. The beloved of the girl was a guy who settled with his parents in a neighboring house. It was a young man of 18 to 19 years old who studied at the college. The guy was actually handsome and attracted the girls who lived nearby. Johnny, that was the young man's name, could often be seen in the company of one or another beauty. When Lily saw this, she was subconsciously angry. She didn't know whether it was at herself or at the boy, or at the person Johnny was with. One day she was walking home from school when she was accosted by the very boy she had been dreaming about for over a month. Lily stopped and looked at the guy, and he leisurely approached and said hello. The girl only wanted to respond as she felt her face turn crimson. She didn't know what to do, as at the moment she was embarrassed that she was blushing in front of the person she liked. Lily, instead of greeting, only nodded her head. Johnny laughed and said, "You're always so shy. Is it very noticeable?" Quietly asked the girl, and only at that moment was able to look directly into the eyes of the young man. "How to tell you, so as not to offend. In general, you now look like a cancer, which just boiled. I clicked you on purpose as I want to meet you. We live in the same yard, and we don't know each other," said the guy, and then said his name. Lily gave a pissed-out smile and said her name. She did not understand what was going on with her, because before this the girl had dreamed of this connection so many times, and when it happened, she did not know how to behave in such a situation. In the meantime, Johnny took the initiative and began to ask his interlocutor about various details. Lily initially answered inhibitedly, but gradually the girl loosened up, and soon the couple had a friendly conversation. They talked about different topics and did not notice how time flew by. The couple's conversation was suddenly interrupted by a phone call. It was Lily's mother, Casey, who excitedly said, "Where are you walking? I got home and you're still not home from school." "I was talking to a classmate," Lily said, and promptly looked at the windows of her apartment. After that, she sighed with relief as she realized that her mother would not see her with the young man from the window. And then the girl added that in 10 minutes she would be home. After she finished talking to her mother, she looked at the boy, who smiled condescendingly. Lily once again felt herself starting to blush. She was extremely embarrassed at this point. Johnny took her hand and said calmly, "Calm down, I understand everything. Your parents are tyrants. That's why I probably don't see you going out. My parents are nice. I don't really go out much myself. I'm sorry, but I gotta go. I know your mom's waiting for you, but maybe you and I can go out tonight." "I don't think so. I'm already late from school today." "Good, then I'll count on tomorrow's walk, especially if you look at the spring weather," the guy said, and at the same moment he asked her for her phone number. The girl came home, and on the doorstep, she was met by her mother, who looked at her daughter inquisitively. She wanted to shout offensive words to the guy, but immediately besieged herself, because Johnny did not promise her anything. The girl came home in a bad mood. She sat down for lessons, but her thoughts were occupied with her lover. Realizing that she would not be able to concentrate on her homework at the moment, Lily forcefully threw the notebook from the table. At that moment, her mother entered the room, who looked at her daughter in amazement and asked what had just happened. The girl shuddered with surprise and lied, "I can't write a plan for my essay." Failing to write an outline for an essay? That's no reason to throw away your notebooks. Father will come and ask him for help. All the next days until Saturday, she waited for a call from Johnny. She thought that the guy in the interval before the meeting would call her at least once, but it did not happen. Lily was in despair, and the closer Saturday approached, the more her mood worsened, and she also suffered from the fact that during this time she had never seen her lover. The daughter's behavior did not hide from the vigilant mother. The woman asked her daughter what was going on with her. Lily could not trust her mother with her secret that she was in love with a young man, and she once again deceived her mother, saying that she was worried about the upcoming exams. The landlady shook her head and said that from today, she would give her daughter a sedative. Saturday came, and at lunchtime Johnny called the girl. He asked if the offer of a walk was still on the table. The girl immediately forgot about the fact that she had been angry with her lover only recently and said yes, and told him what time and where to wait for her. After that, she called her mother and said that she wanted to study literature with a classmate and therefore would be late from school. The mother praised her daughter and told her not to be late. The young people met at a certain place and went for a walk along the alley. They were merrily discussing the announcement of a movie that was to go on next week in the theater, and then the guy suggested to go to the session. Lily, after a little thought, gave her consent. 2 days later, the girl was already approaching the movie theater. She told her mother that she would go to her classmate to prepare for the exam. Lily was approaching the place where they agreed to meet, hoping that Johnny would meet her with flowers, but to the surprise of the guy's girlfriend was not there. She looked around confused, but didn't see her lover anywhere. Lily looked at the clock and realized that if the young man did not appear in 7 minutes, the session would already begin. And at that moment, Johnny, who was without flowers, came up to her and quickly said, "Let's hurry up or we'll be late for the movie." And now the couple was sitting on the back row. The lights went out and the movie started. Lily looked at the screen, but did not think about the plot because her thoughts were occupied by the fact that the loved one was near. And Johnny, as if reading her thoughts, put his hand on her knee. Lily involuntarily blushed and thought to herself that it was wonderful that the hall was dark and her face could not be seen. And at the same moment, the boy turned the girl's head to himself and kissed her on the lips. Lily wanted to push the young man away, but she couldn't. After a few minutes, Johnny let her go and whispered, "You're so delicious, but you don't know how to kiss. I've never been in a relationship with a guy. I've already realized that, and not even today. So we'll learn this craft with you as often as possible." After watching the session, the couple went home. They walked into the yard, and the guy asked if they would see each other tomorrow. Lily promised that she would try to get out of the house. After these words, Johnny said that he would not see her off, so as not to compromise her. The girl smiled and nodded in agreement. At that moment, she thought what a decent young man and worried about her, so that her parents would not see her in the company of a guy. Since then, Lily, under the pretext of going to study with a classmate, broke out of the house and went out with a guy. This went on for about 10 days. And when once again the girl decided to go out with the guy on a date, her mother said that now let the classmate come to them to study for exams. Lily felt her heart clench into a lump. Her throat became sharply dry, and she replied, "Okay, I'll call and tell Nanny to come over." Lily knew that one lie begets another, and that was exactly what was happening in her life right now. The girl went into her room and made an imaginary phone call for the sake of appearances. Then she followed her mother into the hall and informed her that Nanny could not come because she was ill. Casey said in reply, "I must have felt like I didn't let you go to your classmate's house, or you would have gone and probably gotten an infection there. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that I borrowed 3 dresses from a friend who sells clothes. You try them on, because the graduation is just around the corner and it's time to prepare for it too." The girl, suppressing a sigh of disappointment that she would not see her lover today, took the dress and went to her room. She tried on the outfits and settled on one airy dress with 3/4 sleeves. The outfit sat perfectly on the girl, emphasizing her slender figure. Lily walked out to her mother and showed herself to her. Casey exclaimed at the same moment, "I thought that dress would fit you just right. You're going to be the prettiest graduate." Lily nodded at her mother's words. Now she was thinking how she could sneak out of the house because her lover was waiting for her at the agreed place. And then an idea came to mind. Her daughter said that she had run out of a notebook for literature and needed to buy it immediately, so that tomorrow she wouldn't get under the teacher's scolding. Without a word, Casey pulled out a purse from her purse and held out a few bills. The girl threw on a blouse and hurriedly left the apartment. When she got outside, she looked at her watch and found that she was already half an hour late for her appointment. She took her phone from her sweater and only wanted to call her lover when she saw him walking towards her driveway. Lily called out to him and hurried over to the guy. Johnny frowned at the girl and said, Was it hard to at least send a text message so I wouldn't wait for you? I'll explain everything to you now. Don't be mad at me. First, I expect an apology from you, and I'll accept it only in the form of your kiss, just to test how you have successfully mastered the lessons on this subject. The boy spoke softly. You're crazy. The girl was startled and wanted to look back at her windows, but at the same moment the boy hugged her and kissed her. Lily felt the ground go away from under her feet. She always felt like that when Johnny started kissing her. It took a couple minutes before the young man released the girl from his embrace. Lily looked at him with loving eyes, and he, in turn, pulled her back to him by the waist. At the same moment, Casey's voice came from the window, shouting loudly for her daughter to go home immediately. The girl looked at the guy with consternation, but he just shrugged and then nonchalantly said that it wasn't his fault. Lily turned around and quickly headed home. She already knew that a huge scandal was waiting for her at home, and she was not mistaken about it. As soon as she entered the apartment, she was immediately slapped. Lily looked at her mother with fright because she had never raised her hand before. Meanwhile, Casey grabbed her daughter's hand and led her into the living room, where she said loudly, "How am I to understand you? Is that what you mean? That's what you were doing with your classmate? You've been lying to me all this time. You decided to make love behind your parents' back. Who's that crazy guy?" "Mom, I love him and he loves me. As soon as I turn 18, I'll marry him." "You didn't answer my question." The mother raised her voice. "His name is Johnny, and he's in his last year of plumbing school." "What did you say?" "Plumber," Casey said, and then she laughed, and a couple minutes later she shouted angrily, "No plumbers. You're out of your mind. Your father and I didn't make it as wealthy men, and we don't want you to do the same. And you threw yourself into the arms of some future plumber. God, that's embarrassing. I can't even imagine what my father will say when he finds out." And only the landlady said this as the woman's husband entered the living room, who frowned his eyebrows and said, "What's all this noise? But there's no fight. Honey, I heard you screaming from outside the apartment. What happened?" "Here comes the head of the household. Well, Rocky, you can look at your daughter. Just the other day, I saw your well-respected daughter kissing a future plumber in the middle of the yard. How do you like that news?" The man looked sternly at his daughter, and she drew her head away from her father's hard gaze. Rocky took a few steps toward Lily. It was obvious he was holding back from slapping his daughter across the face. The man was taken aback by his wife's news. It was several minutes before he spoke. "I am very disappointed with what I have just heard. You are my daughter, and you should listen to your parents. That's what your mother and I taught you from the time you were in diapers. And now you're going to promise me that you're going to cut all ties with this man." "Dad, but I love him with all my heart." "It's not love yet. It's just empty fun for you and for him. You must get this man out of your head. You need someone to provide for you later in life. And if you go against my will now, I will curse you for life. Do you understand me?" The head of the family said harshly, "Yes," quietly answered the daughter, who could barely hold back tears of resentment. "Now go to your room." As soon as Lily left and closed the door to the room, the couple immediately began to discuss their daughter's behavior. At one time they dreamed that they would become a wealthy family, but it did not happen for a number of reasons. In childhood, Lily was often sick, and her mother took her to a resort so that the child could breathe sea air. Then her husband's injury at work, after which he stayed at home for a long time. Then the funeral of Casey's parents. All this took money, and the couple could not save up finances. In this regard, the couple decided that only a daughter can fix everything in life. Casey and Rocky dreamed of getting Lily away to a wealthy man, so that later she would provide them with a decent old age. Therefore, the spouses brought up the girl in strictness. Lily sat in her room and cried. She did not know how to convince her parents that Johnny was the meaning of life for her. The girl realized that her father would not change his attitude to her meetings with her lover. But still, somewhere in the back of her mind, she hoped that her father would change his mind and would not oppose her relationship with Johnny. The next day, Lily called her lover in the morning at school and asked him to meet her outside the school. She said that she would excuse herself from the last 2 lessons. The guy did not refuse. The couple met, and Lily told the guy everything and immediately asked what they should do now. The young man, after a little thought, said that this question would remain open for the time being. The girl said with tears in her eyes that she had no idea how she would live if they broke up. Johnny hugged her and said that he was not going to break up with her. The young people called each other more often than they saw each other. Lily dreamed of only one thing, to be reunited with her lover. She was ready to marry her lover as soon as she turned 18. And then came the day of the graduation party. The girl looked wonderful that day. She wanted her favorite young man to see her in a white outfit, too. Lily called Johnny and invited him to drop by their school. The young man promised to show up. When the official graduation ceremony passed, then Lily's parents approached their daughter. They congratulated the girl and asked what would happen next. Lily answered that first there would be a prom, and then the whole class with the head of the class would walk around the city until early morning. The girl's father frowned and said that he could only let his daughter celebrate until midnight, and then he would come and pick her up. Lily wanted to object, but her father said, "Either you agree with my decision, or after your dance I'm taking you home." "Okay, Dad. I'll call you at 12:30 at night to check on your whereabouts," Rocky said, and then, taking his wife under his arm, left. Lily furtively glanced around while she was talking to her parents. She looked for her favorite person, who was nowhere to be seen. As soon as her mother and father left the school, she ran outside to look for Johnny, but to her regret the boy was not there. The girl returned to the building. Her mood was low. She went to the window and looked at the street. After standing for a while, she decided that there was no point in waiting any longer, as she saw Johnny walking by. Lily adjusted her dress and headed towards her lover. As soon as the young man saw the girl, he spoke with admiration. "You are the bride herself in this dress. How beautiful you are, you can't even imagine. I'd kiss you right here. Why don't we go for a walk? I'd like to be alone with you right now." "How can I just leave like that? My teacher will be after me," the girl said, perplexed. "Say you have a headache and want to go home. But my father will call me to pick me up, and I have to be with the class when he comes." "Oh, you silly little thing, you're making a big deal out of it. You and I will be at the classmate's house by then. You just call one of the alumni beforehand and find out where they are. Problem solved. Agree, when else we will have the opportunity to be together like this?" the young man said insistently. Lily looked at the boy with loving eyes. She realized that she shouldn't agree to this proposal, but she wanted to be with her lover so much that common sense took a back seat. The girl smiled and gave the guy a positive answer to his request. The young people soon left the school. They were walking through the evening city. Johnny hugged the girl with one arm and said compliments to her. Lily was happy at this moment. Meanwhile, the young man proposed to celebrate the end of school in his garage. The girl wanted to refuse, however. Johnny convincingly said, "You have nothing to fear. We will just sit a little and listen to romantic music, drink a glass of champagne. All the more so we have no legs to walk so much." The girl agreed to the guy's proposal. After that, they went to the store, where they'd bought champagne, and in 10 minutes they were in the garage. Lily looked around with interest, and the young man at this time had already turned on the music and filled paper cups with a sparkling drink. After that, Johnny approached the girl and offered her a drink. Lily took a little taste and put the glass away, but the owner of the garage uttered, "This is not the way to do it. You only graduate once in your life. Let's drink to the bottom and then dance." The first glass of champagne was followed by another, and then the couple began to dance. The young man showered the girl's face with light kisses during the dance. Lily did not resist. She was pleased with the touch of her lover's lips, and after a while the couple lay on the sofa. Johnny gently embraced the girl, and then the couple made love. Some time passed, and Lily realized that here, on the couch, she first gave herself to a man and became a woman. The thought made her laugh, and she laughed. The guy looked at her perplexed. Lily saw that her partner didn't understand the reason for her laughter, so she quietly explained to him, "You don't think anything bad. It's funny to me that I became a wife in rage on an old couch. It's a very romantic setting for intimacy. But you wanted it, or would you say you didn't?" "I wanted to, but I was afraid to," Lily confessed honestly, and at that moment the girl's phone rang. It was her father. Lily looked at the boy fearfully. She didn't know what to say to her father, because she hadn't yet called her classmate to find out where they were. Johnny, seeing that the girl was scared, came to her rescue and said, "Say that you are standing near the school, and your classmates will now go further out. When the father comes, you will tell him that the graduates have already left a few minutes ago, especially from here to go not far from the school. Come on, answer quickly, or your father will suspect something." And soon Lily was standing at the school porch, where Rocky was approaching. The man waved his hand to his daughter and, approaching her, asked, "How was your walk?" The girl replied that it was wonderful and began to think of where she had been this time with the graduates. Day after day dragged on. Lily met with Johnny very rarely. The girl was looking forward to turning 18. She had already tried to talk to her father once again about her lover, but Rocky interrupted her half-heartedly. And that was the only reason why the girl dreamed of her birthday, so that it would be possible to leave home. She was even ready to live with her lover in his garage, but only so that the guy would be around. Some time passed. Lily entered the institute, and after Johnny informed the girl that he was being taken to the army in the fall, Lily was upset, but vowed that she would wait for him from the service. The young man grinned and replied that it was not worth it. The interlocutor was amazed at the words of her lover and at the same moment clicked. How should I understand you? You told me that you love, and now you inform me that it is not necessary to wait. Silly, realize that we are still young with you and we need to take a walk, and you keep stuttering about marriage. You should talk to your father about it before you plan any illusions of a life together. I thought you were going to talk to my dad man to man, not me. And if we're talking about age, young people start families and go out together. You misunderstood me. The word walk is not a walk in the park. It means to have fun without having the family. Are you saying you're attracted to other girls? Asked Lily, who had just realized what the chosen one was talking about. As soon as she realized it, she felt her cheeks blazing and tears came to her eyes. The girl looked reproachfully at her lover, silently turned around and went home. After the conversation, a week flew by. All this time, Lily sat at home. She tried not to think about anything. Her mother noticed that something was going on with her daughter and asked her what was bothering her. The girl, in order not to continue the conversation, answered that she wasn't feeling well. Casey looked at her daughter and touched her forehead. Then the woman left the room and returned 15 minutes later with a mug of hot tea and a jar of honey. She put it all in front of her daughter and said in an orderly tone, "Eat the honey and drink your tea. You don't want to get sick before you meet a young man." Lily only took the first sip, but as soon as she heard her mother's words, she immediately choked. She looked at Casey's mother in amazement. Casey calmly endured the look and also calmly replied, "Why are you looking at me as if you were seeing me for the first time? You haven't misheard, you have a young man to meet. Did you really think you'd spend the rest of your life clinging to your mom's skirt? A man got a job at my father's workplace. He was hired as some kind of supervisor. Dad got to talking to this man and showed him your prom photo. The man was fascinated by you. Your dad noticed it right away and asked him to meet you. Shouldn't I be asked my opinion on this? Are we living in the Middle Ages? Am I supposed to marry the man you find for me? But it's a marriage of convenience. Why did you give birth to me, Mom?" The daughter said indignantly, "You must have felt that you have become an adult if you allow yourself to talk to your mother like that. Although you probably learned it from that plumber. I can't believe I forgot, but we'll talk about that later. Now I'll tell you the plain truth that your father and I did everything for you to have a good life, and you should remember and appreciate it." After saying that, Casey gave her daughter an annihilating look and left the room. As soon as her mother closed the door on the other side, Lily ducked into her pillow and roared. She had lived in harmony with her parents before she met Johnny and thought they were smart people and doing the right thing. But now she had completely changed her mind. The girl considered herself as if in a trap, as if she lived not in the present time, but in the time when parents themselves chose a groom for their daughter. And also Lily was tormented by not finished conversation with Johnny. It seemed that their conversation was spontaneous and ended in reticence. That day, Lily slept badly at night. She had nightmares. She woke up several times from her own moaning. When she woke up early in the morning, she breathed a sigh of relief that the night was over. But at the same moment, Lily felt bad, unbearable nausea appeared. The girl barely managed to squeeze to the restroom before she vomited. She stood there for a while thinking about what she could have eaten yesterday that wasn't fresh enough to make her vomit. But nothing came to mind. And then Lily decided that it was because of last night's excitement and the almost sleepless night. The girl had struggled all day, sick with the fact that she was always feeling nauseous. When her mother came home from work, Lily wanted to complain about not feeling well, but immediately changed her mind. She knew that then she would have to drink different concoctions, as her mother liked to show herself a great herbalist in such cases. The girl calmed herself by saying that tomorrow she would feel better, but it did not happen. The next day she felt just as bad. Lily panicked, as she could not understand what was happening to her. She waited until lunch and then just lay on her bed and soon fell asleep. Casey, coming home from work, was surprised to see her daughter sleeping at this time of day. The woman walked over and quietly touched Lily's arm. The girl flinched at the touch and opened her eyes. As soon as she saw her mother, she involuntarily uttered that she didn't feel well. Casey anxiously asked her daughter what exactly was bothering her. Lily replied languidly, "I've been nauseous since yesterday. The dizziness is terrible. You're poisoned. I'll call an ambulance right away." "Do not need any doctors. Better make your herbal concoction," asked her daughter. After a while, Lily had already drunk her mother's concoction and was lying in bed again. Casey waited anxiously for her husband from work. The woman did not like her daughter's condition, and in this case, she preferred to call an ambulance. When the husband came, the wife told her husband about Lily's indisposition. Rocky asked his wife not to worry and suggested that tomorrow he take his daughter to the clinic and show the doctor. The next day, Casey and Lily sat in the therapist's office. The girl told about what was bothering her. The doctor, an elderly woman, listened to the visitor, then examined Lily and asked a question. "Have you had intimate relations with the opposite sex?" Lily blushed and couldn't say anything. Her mother spoke indignantly instead. Casey uttered, "What kind of stupid question is that? My daughter is a chaste girl." "I have nothing against that. It's just that all the symptoms indicate that your daughter may be in an interesting position. I can't say that, but I would advise you to take Lily to a gynecologist." The woman in the white coat replied calmly, "Let your fiancé propose to you. If he refuses, then I myself, regardless of your resistance, take you to the hospital. You know what for? We do not need the shame that my daughter has fathered a child." "Daddy, thank you. Johnny will definitely agree to marry me when he finds out he's going to be a father," the girl exclaimed joyfully. She naively believed that the young man would be happy to hear the news, but her expectation was not justified. As soon as the guy found out about it, he immediately said that he did not need a child like her. Lily was confused, as such words she did not expect. The young woman tried to talk about the sublime feelings that were between them, but the interlocutor in response to this only laughed. This hurt Lily, but she held back her resentment as she realized that if she did not convince her lover to make her an offer now, her father would fulfill his promise. And the girl turned to the guy with tears in her eyes. "Okay, I realize that I do not need you, but I ask you, pretend for my father that you want to marry me. Understand that this is my first pregnancy and the baby under my heart that I haven't seen yet, but I already love. I promise you that I will never ask you for help unless you want to help us." The girl persuaded the young man to help her for a long time, and Johnny agreed. Soon the guy was already sitting in front of Lily's father and promised to get married, but only after he served in the army. Rocky inquired, "Why only after serving?" And Johnny, hiding a grin, replied, "In 10 days I already have to defend the homeland, and this is a small period of time to prepare for the wedding." Reasonably said, "The main thing is that you will marry my daughter." Sighing, Rock said. Lily, who had heard the whole conversation between her father and the boy, thought to herself how easily Johnny had fooled her father. She knew that her lover would never recognize the paternity of the future child and would not live with her. He told the girl about it more than once, although in her heart the young woman still hoped that when the baby was born, Johnny might change his mind. The months flew by, and soon Lily gave birth to a boy. All the while she walked around pregnant, the young woman was pestered by her mother. Casey often gave her daughter demonstrative talks, where she told her that Lily was a girl of easy behavior, which brought the girl to tears. In connection with these experiences, the young woman's baby was born prematurely with underdeveloped legs, the boy half missing feet. However, Lily, despite this, with all her heart loved her son, whom she named Tony. She fondly took care of the firstborn, giving him all her tenderness and care. Unlike Lily, her parents had a different attitude to the fact that they became grandparents. Rocky accepted the grandson with joy, but his wife was not happy about the appearance of a new member of the family. Casey could not love Tony due to the fact that the boy had a physical disfigurement. Soon Johnny returned from the army. The first to know about it was the girl's father. Rocky was coming home from work and saw the young man. The man joyfully greeted the guy and immediately talked about the upcoming wedding. Johnny, in response to this, only smirked and said, "Dad, what wedding? Wake up. I'm not going to marry anyone. I'm happy living alone." Are you saying that you're going to leave my daughter alone with a baby in her arms? What's that got to do with me? I have no idea who got your daughter pregnant. She just asked me to tell you that I was going to marry her. Lily wanted to have the baby so you wouldn't oppose it, and I did her a favor. Rocky came home in a rage. The man demanded an explanation from his daughter. Lily told her father everything without secrecy. All this was also heard by her mother, who was angry that her daughter had once again deceived them. The father was able to overcome the anger at his daughter because the time has passed and it is necessary to live on. But the wife could not forgive Lily for the fact that she knew that Johnny is not going to marry. Since then, the woman often saw her daughter reproaches and at the same time and hated her grandson. Time flew by and Tony turned 7 months old, as came Rocky, who bought a soft toy on that day. The man bought a toy every month on the day his grandson appeared. This time he came with a teddy bear. The head of the family handed the toy to Tony and took the boy in his arms. And at the same moment his wife turned to him. "You spoil the boy. And who but the grandfather will spoil the boy if the father does not need the child? That's why you should think about finding a husband for your daughter. She can't just sit on our backs all the time." "All right, I'll talk to you right now." Rocky followed to his daughter, who was ironing her son's suit. He asked Lily to take her mind off her work and asked why she wasn't walking with the baby. The girl smiled in response and said that she spent an hour every day outside with the child. The man shrugged his shoulders perplexedly and proceeded to his spouse, who said, "Why are you clinging to your daughter? She walks with the child every day. And you don't defend her. She walks in the morning, and she should also walk in the evening, preferably when I get home. That's when I'd always watch moms with strollers." Lily heard her parents talking. The girl sighed bitterly and wondered when her mother would stop berating her for the past, because so much time had passed and she couldn't settle down. Lily decided not to provoke her mother and began to go out for a walk with the child twice a day. One day the young woman went out with the stroller and the baby. She decided to go to a children's clothing store that day to look for overalls for Tony. Lily walked slowly down the street and thought about how long she would still have to endure her mother's nagging for every pastiche. The girl was really tired of Casey picking on every little thing. She was especially annoyed when her mother said, "You gave birth to an invalid, and now my father and I have to raise him, and it's all at your mercy." Lily shook her head to push the thoughts away, and then noticed that she was already near the children's clothing store. She thought about leaving the stroller outside and walking through the boutiques with the baby in her arms. And then she was called by name. The young woman turned around and saw Johnny looking at her with a smile. Lily involuntarily remembered at the most inopportune moment how he kissed her, and immediately the girl's face turned crimson. The man, seeing this, laughed and came closer, saying, "You don't need to change with time. By the way, motherhood has done you good. In terms of your figure, your shape has acquired roundness, which is very attractive. Is that why you called me here, to discuss my figure?" With undisguised irritation, said Lily, who after the words of the young man became angry. "Don't pout. It doesn't suit you. Many will meet. Remember how we had fun in the garage. Find yourself now other silly girls, and I have already learned bitter experiences." Lily replied, who actually would be glad to be in the arms of this man again. However, she realized that this should not be allowed, because she knew that Johnny did not really love her and needed her only for pleasures in bed. And with that, the young woman took hold of the handle of the stroller and walked in the other direction. She had already changed her mind about going into the store. Time flew by unnoticed. Tommy was already 4 years old. Lily and the baby were still living with her parents. The young woman took care of her son, trying to make sure that the child developed like his peers who went to kindergarten. Lily could not give the boy to a kindergarten, as the baby could not walk independently, and so she studied special literature to ensure that the child received the necessary information at his age. Lily's father encouraged his daughter's desire to develop Tony, but spouse Rocky still continued to terrorize his daughter. Lily bore her mother's attacks in silence. She realized that she had nothing to say in response, as she was financially dependent on her parents. The woman received a pension for her son, but it was not a large allowance, which would be difficult for her and Tony to live on. And Casey often reminded her daughter that it was time for Larry to find a home-based job to bring income into the family budget. Another 6 months flew by unnoticed. Lily sat at home and read a book to her son. The baby initially listened attentively, but then began to be distracted by toys. The young woman smiled and stopped reading, telling Tony that she would ask him later what the book was about. Just then, Lily heard her mom come in from work. The girl hurried to meet her mother as she immediately heard a rebuke in her direction from Casey. "You stayed home all day and didn't cook dinner. Ma, you haven't even been in the kitchen yet and you're blaming me. Tony and I made dumplings this morning, and now we just have to boil them and that's it. I would have done it earlier, but I wanted you to eat them hot." "What are you doing, Tony? Letting your hands touch the dough? He's probably just messed up the whole kitchen in there," Casey said indignantly and headed off to see what was going on in the kitchen. Lily only sighed bitterly and went to her son. She already knew that if her mother came and started nagging her from the doorstep, she would be picking on her and Tony all evening. So she decided that it was better to go for a walk than to sit and listen to her barbed remarks. Lily dressed her son and they headed outside. In the meantime, Rocky came home. He asked from the doorstep how the household was doing. His wife came out to meet him and said she was home alone. The husband asked where Lily and his son were and heard in response that they finally went for a walk. The man asked, "What's for dinner?" "Cabbage dumplings. I just opened the door." "Come on, sit down. By the way, I forgot to ask, did you know we have a new Oligarch?" "I heard something, but I didn't go into details." "And you say that as if you know something about him." With a smile, said the husband, "I don't know much. I can say that he's single, opened 2 stores, and that's not the limit. If Lily had such a husband, we would live like cheese and butter." "Oh, I'm dreaming. I don't know what kind of husband I'm talking about for my daughter. Lily can't get out of the house to walk the kid, and he needs fresh air. She probably went outside today on purpose because she knows I'm going to tell you about it. You should talk to her. I think you're picking on your daughter again. And Lily's gone out so she can't hear you. I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a long time. Why don't you stop hurting your daughter? It's in the past. What happened is what happened. It's our fault for not looking after our daughter, and we have ourselves to blame. And on top of that, you're taking it out on Tony, who's your grandson. Let's just let bygones be bygones and live in peace. You realize that Lily's having a hard time too. She's with the baby all the time. Our daughter is responsible for what happened to her. I can only say this about the child. As soon as I look at him, I remember that Tony is the son of a plumber who has never helped me financially." The wife said irritably, "But what's the grandson got to do with it? If this guy does not want to recognize his son, he, as they say, did his job and into the bushes." While the parents were talking about Lily, she was walking down the street carrying her son in a wheelchair. The young woman was contemplating the fact that finances would soon be needed, and then she was distracted from her thoughts by her son's exclamation. "Mom, I want to draw with chalk on the pavement too." Lily looked at Tony and saw that the boy was pointing at the girls who were drawing on the road. The young woman smiled at the child and said it would be more interesting with colored watercolors to draw in a sketchbook. The boy looked at his mother with a serious look and then said, "But I don't have those colors. So right now let's go in and buy some, and already in the evening you will paint." The mother replied with a smile. Soon the woman and the child were already approaching the store where she was going to buy watercolor paints and an album. And then Lily realized that she had forgotten her purse with the cat in it. She sighed dejectedly and told her son about it. The boy frowned and a tear ran down his cheek. The woman crouched down on her knee and asked Tony not to cry, and at that moment she was pushed by a passing burly lady. The shove made Lily involuntarily fall on her side. She looked at the stranger, who in turn said, "You blocked the pedestrian part that it is impossible to pass, and do not even think that I will apologize. Here my fault is not." Lily was outraged by the lady's behavior and did not find words to answer the rude woman. A middle-aged man rushed to the girl's aid and helped Lily to her feet, and then said to the lady, "I think you are the one here with your figure filling up all the space on the pedestrian area. And the girl you push is an inch taller than you are." "Boor." The burly woman replied and continued on her way. Lily thanked the stranger and was about to go home, but she was stopped by a man. He said he had heard about the paints and the forgotten wallet and offered to pay for the purchase. Lily politely declined. Then the stranger said, "Allow me to make this insignificant gift for you. For me, the purchase of paints and an album is nothing, especially the store you wanted to visit is mine, so don't refuse mine offer. I would also like to tell you that I am a new person here and did not expect that there are such beauties like you in this city. Thank you for the compliment, but I am able to pay for the purchase." The young woman replied and felt her face begin to blush again. After that, the girl hurried to leave, but the stranger held her hand with the words, "Please do not run away so immediately. At least allow me to escort you." "I don't need an escort. Stay a few minutes here. I'll be right back," the man said, and without waiting for an answer, he hurried into the store. Lily was puzzled as to what this man wanted. She didn't want to talk to the stranger, and she headed home. But after a few minutes, she was caught up by the man, who immediately said, "I asked you to wait for me. Here you go. I took several kinds of watercolors, as well as brushes and a couple of sketchbooks. But I didn't ask you to do that." "I know, but I did it on my own initiative because your son asked you to. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Barry. What's your name?" The young woman looked at the man, who smiled at her with disbelief. The girl wanted to tell this man to go to hell, but it was inconvenient as he helped her up from the ground, and she reluctantly said her name. Meanwhile, the man handed the paints, brushes, and sketchbooks to the boy, who gasped enthusiastically. Then the adult and the child walked down the street. Barry told how he had come here, then said he was a businessman and had 2 stores. Lily listened inattentively as she was not interested in what Barry was saying. The man noticed this and said softly, "You don't seem at all interested in what I'm saying. Perhaps you'd like to tell me about yourself." "I'm sorry, but I didn't intend to get acquainted with you, and I know very well that now you'll see me off and we won't meet again. Why are you being so categorical? For example, I'm looking forward to meeting you again. I would very much like to continue our acquaintance," the man said and looked at her. "I would also like a lot of things in life, but I do not talk about it." "And you say maybe I will be able to fulfill your wish," the man said with a smile. "I don't think you can do that. By the way, we're here. This is where I live. Thank you for seeing me off and standing up for me. Oh, I almost forgot. Now I'll pay you for what you bought for us." After these words, the girl called her mother and asked her to take out her purse. After a while, Casey came out of the entrance and looked reproachfully at her daughter. Immediately, the woman shifted her gaze to the stranger. She immediately appreciated that the man was dressed exquisitely. Meanwhile, Lily took out some money and asked Barry, "How much do we owe you for coloring books, sketchbooks, brushes?" "Absolutely nothing, unless you agree to at least exchange phone numbers. For starters, I've already told you that I have no desire to keep in touch," the girl said softly and handed the man a few bills, which Barry refused. Lily shrugged noncommittally, then said goodbye and wheeled the stroller into the driveway. Her mother followed. At home, Casey turned to her daughter and asked who the man was. The girl nonchalantly replied that he was the owner of a store that had recently opened not far away. The woman looked at her daughter with surprise and then asked why the man was with her. Lily told in a nutshell what had happened and afterwards hurried to occupy her son, who was already eagerly waiting for his mother to put him to draw at the table. Casey, after her daughter's message, hesitated. She could see that the man liked Lily. And immediately the woman was alarmed, because it was the same oligarch about whom she told her spouse today. The owner of the apartment immediately followed her daughter and softly said, "Why did you refuse to give him a phone number? I saw the way he looked at you." "Ma, I don't want to date anyone." Casey walked out of her daughter's room in annoyance. Just today, she was dreaming of a rich man asking her daughter to marry her. And immediately, Lily had met such a man. What the woman resented the most at this point was that Lily had, to put it simply, just blown off an oligarch. And then Casey had an idea. The next day, the woman walked into the store where Barry worked after work. She turned to the clerk and asked her to call her employer. The uniformed girl told her that the boss came here on certain days. Casey clarified which ones and then went home. Lily's mother showed up at the store on Friday, as she knew that the owner of the outlet had to be here on that day. She asked the saleswoman to call the manager again, and soon the woman met the owner of the store. The man, as soon as he approached the visitor, asked in a businesslike tone what she wanted. Casey smiled back and said softly, "You and I do not know each other, although we have seen each other before." He interrupted her and asked her to get to the point, adding that he had a lot to do. Casey immediately realized that this man knew his value, and she said, "I'm sorry to bother you and take up your time, but I came to thank you for helping my daughter. A few days ago, she was pushed here by a woman, and you helped her up, and then bought art supplies for my grandson. My daughter's name is Lily. I brought you a potion I made myself as a token of my gratitude." Don't worry, it's not poison. It's my herbal decoction that helps restore your strength. I can't thank you with other things, as we are not very rich people. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Wait, are you the mother of that girl whose son is an invalid? The man exclaimed in amazement. Yes, the woman answered and immediately added, I would like to invite you to my specialty. It's potatoes with meat in a rustic way, but I'm afraid you will refuse. You don't have to answer for me because I'm accepting the offer. Tell me your apartment because I already know the house and what day I will be there and at what time. The shopkeeper said with a smile. Casey mentally triumphed because her plan had succeeded and Barry had taken the bait in the form of her daughter. The woman said she didn't want to delay and was expecting the man to visit tomorrow. The interlocutor said that he would definitely be there and immediately asked what to bring, as he was not used to coming empty-handed. Casey said with feigned embarrassment, No need to spend money. My husband and I just want to thank you in a human way. Thank you for the invitation. I will definitely come. And as for the guests, I will think of something myself. The next day, Casey cooked her specialty and walked around the apartment with a mysterious look. She only informed her husband that a businessman was coming to visit and also told him that she wanted her daughter to start a relationship with the man. If Rocky knew about his wife's plans, then Lily was puzzled why her mother prepared a weekday specialty. The girl tried to ask her mother on what occasion she was preparing a holiday dinner, but the woman in response only said that she just wanted to make the day special. And soon the doorbell rang. Casey hurried into the hallway. She opened the door and let the guest in, who was holding 2 bouquets of flowers as well as a package. The man, and it was Barry, greeted the landlady and said, "One bouquet for you and the other for your beautiful daughter. In the bag, I took various goodies at my discretion because I didn't know your food preferences. Why did you spend so much money? Come on in and I'll introduce you to my husband," the woman said, and at that moment Lily came out into the hallway to see who her mother was talking to. As soon as she saw the guest, she looked at him incomprehensibly. Barry at the same moment handed her flowers and said greetingly, "Hi, I was invited by your mom to visit and I couldn't refuse. Here are the roses. I'm sorry if it's the wrong ones, but I didn't know which ones you prefer." With these words, the man handed the bouquet to the girl. Soon everyone was sitting at the table, and the guest was telling about how he moved to this city. The man listened attentively to Casey, who was interested in everything from the biography of the entrepreneur. The woman learned that the man is 39 years old and was married, but the marriage broke up and there are no children. And also the guest said that he already had 2 stores and he was going to open another one. The landlady noted to herself that this was a suitable candidate for her daughter's husband, and also the woman saw the way Barry looked at her daughter. If all this was interesting to Casey, Lily listened without interest. After a while Barry was going home, he asked Lily to walk him only to the exit of the entrance. The man wanted to talk to her alone, but the girl refused the request, saying that she could not leave her son alone. And at the same moment in the conversation of the couple intervened Casey, who said to her daughter, "Don't talk nonsense. Are me and my grandfather strangers to Tony? See the guest off." Lily looked at her mother with bewilderment because she had never taken the initiative to spend time with her grandson. But the young woman did not argue and agreed to escort the man, and soon the couple stood near the entrance. On the street, the man said to the girl that he was glad to visit her and get acquainted with her parents. Lily replied, "I'm glad you liked everything, but I have to go home." "Do I disgust you so much?" Barry replied dejectedly, "I didn't say that, but I don't think we've ever been on a first-name basis." The young woman said, "Then we have from now on. Goodbye." The girl replied and walked into the entryway. At this moment, she prayed to God that the man would not stop her and her dream would come true. At home, however, the girl was already being rushed by her mother, who immediately began to ask her daughter what Barry had said to her. Lily, hiding irritation, said that she just saw the man off and that's all. From that time, the young woman began to call Barry often. The girl did not even ask how the man got her phone number, because she knew that her mother had contributed to this, and Barry began to visit Lily. And each time he did not come empty-handed. The man was sure to bring with him expensive products. That pleased Casey. Lily was indifferent to Barry's visits, which irritated her mother. The landlady reprimanded her daughter that she was doing the wrong thing by ignoring the man. But Lily ignored her mother's words. And one day, Casey couldn't stand it anymore and said to her daughter, "What do you think you're doing? thinking the plumber's gonna come back to you. So I can tell you that he has long been with a spectacular blondie and forgot to think about you. You've had enough of the clouds. If you don't want to think about yourself, think about your son. Barry will replace his real father." The girl said nothing and went into the room to her son, who was drawing in an album with watercolors. The boy had recently become very fond of this activity, and in Lily's opinion, he was doing a good job. The young woman approached the child and stroked his head. At the same moment, the girl's father entered the room. Lily turned around and saw Rocky holding onto his heart. Lily wanted to run up to her father, but he gestured to stop her and said, "I'm fine. I want to talk to you without Mom present. I heard your conversation with her just now. Daughter, I realize you don't like Barry, but maybe you should consider him for a husband. Don't interrupt me right now. The thing is, I can see your mother terrorizing you. I can't change her, and I was like that in my day. But I could change, but your mom can't. She still can't forgive you for having a son with that young man. Casey thinks you ruined her life. I used to think that too, because my wife and I couldn't make it as a family. So I thought your good marriage would change everything. I'll say I used to think that, but I changed my mind. I wish I'd done it sooner, but better late than never. You see, I'm talking to you honestly, and you know very well that I'm not nagging you at all for your past as a mother, as I haven't considered you guilty of anything for a long time. But now I'd like to get away from this lyric and get back to Barry. The whole thing is that my heart has been aching lately. I'm really worried that one of these days I'm going to be gone." As soon as Rocky uttered the last words, Lily rushed to her father. The girl tearfully asked her dad not to talk about the fact that he might die. The man stroked his daughter with one hand and asked him to finish listening and continued speaking. "I dwelt on the fact that I may not be in this life. So that's when it will be totally unbearable for you to live with your mother. And with Barry, if you legitimize the relationship, you will be lucky in all cases. I've spoken to him and he's ready to adopt Tony. Imagine having a father and being protected by your spouse without your mom bothering you. I realize that Barry is twice your age and you don't like him, but you haven't given him a chance to open up to you as a man. Maybe Barry's a wonderful man you'll grow to love. You think about what I'm saying?" With that, Rocky left the room, leaving his daughter to ponder. It was the first time Lily had ever heard her father admit his mistakes, and to talk to her so frankly with her dad's words. And yet somewhere in the back of her mind, she realized that her father's proposal to marry Barry was not devoid of common sense. However, as soon as the girl imagined going to bed with this man, she involuntarily twitched with disgust. She still loved Johnny and couldn't imagine anyone else by her side. Several days had passed since the conversation with her father. Lily was still cold to Barry's visits, and one day her mother, seeing her daughter refuse to go out with the man for the umpteenth time, gave Lily a scandal. The girl could not stand it and said to her mother, "Calm down, Mom. Everything will be in your way." After these words, Lily called Barry and not forced to say, "I'd like to talk to you, if I may right now." Soon the couple was already sitting in the cafe and talking. Barry, talking to the interlocutor, frankly admired her. The man realized that any other girl, and she would have been with him a long time ago, but he was as if bewitched by Lily. Her image just excited him. The woman he was talking to suddenly said, "What do you expect from our meetings? Will you stop talking to me in first name? I'm not so old, I'm only 42 years old, and I expect from meetings only one thing, that I will offer you to become my wife, and you will agree. Let's assume that you propose and I accept it. I can't go straight to you, but I'll try. I also have one condition, that you won't organize a big wedding and won't offend my son. I agree to all your conditions." With delight, said the man, and immediately kissed Lily's hand. Soon the wedding took place. Casey was overjoyed. She was only marred by the fact that the couple did not want to organize a lavish feast on this occasion. The woman dreamed that numerous friends learned that her daughter was marrying an oligarch. After the wedding, Lily moved to live with her husband in a 3-room apartment in the city center. Her spouse immediately offered to hire a caregiver for Tony, but she declined and said that her mother was able to handle the responsibilities of mother and housewife. Barry also honored the promise he made to Lily's father. The man adopted Tony a short time later. Some time passed. Lily was able to get used to her spouse, but to love this man never succeeded. The wife liked that her husband was courteous to her with her son, and Barry would be happy that his favorite soulmate was with him. He was even sometimes surprised that after several years of married life, his feelings for this woman had not cooled from the word at all. It even seemed to Barry that every year he loved Lily more and more. And now Tony was 7 years old. Barry hired a teacher to come to the house to teach the boy. The boy in his time never stopped painting. And so Lily asked her husband, "Maybe you, Tony, find a teacher of drawing. Let him also come to teach him this art. Look at how enthusiastic your son is about it. But look at other kids his age, and you'll see that all they do in their spare time is social media and laptop games. Whatever you say, sweetie. Your word is law for me to be the boy's art teacher." Tony was already in his 10th year. The boy was sitting at his desk, painting a fall landscape that came to his mind. Lily was preparing dinner in the kitchen. She was waiting for her husband from work, as here the phone rang. It was the girl's mother. The young woman answered and immediately heard the sobbing voice of the mother, who spoke through her tears. "Your father is dead." "How did he die?" Lily asked in a hoarse voice of excitement. "Didn't you hear? Your father is gone. He had a heart attack. Rocky was soon buried." Lily sobbed desperately as the coffin was lowered into the grave. The woman realized that she was leaving a man who understood her like no one else. Lily realized that now never again would her father come to visit her to cheer her up, nor would he ask her what masterpiece his grandson had painted. A little over a year passed after the funeral. Lily received a phone call from her mother saying she wanted to stop by for a visit. Her daughter replied that she was always happy to have her visit. In truth, however, Lily was indifferent to her mother's visit, for she came only to borrow money, which was never returned. The woman was not interested in her grandchildren. She was not interested in the success of the boy. Soon Casey was sitting in her daughter's living room. She was drinking freshly brewed coffee with a piece of cake. Lily asked about her mother's health, and at the same moment the guest sighed sorrowfully and said that she had been suffering from migraines lately. Lily advised her to see a doctor. The mother looked at her daughter reproachfully and said, "What kind of crazy idea did you suggest to me? Don't you know that those doctors will find a lot of diseases that will make you not want to live in this world? I'd like to go to the seaside. That's the best option. Who's stopping you from doing that? Take a vacation, go. Don't you realize you need money for that?" Casey said sullenly, "You're probably just trying to get me to ask my husband for money again. You know, Mom, I've been meaning to ask you a question. You work, you live alone. I give you some money every month, but you still don't have enough. I'm just curious where your money goes." Casey was just about to answer when Tony entered the room in his wheelchair. He sent a respectful hello to her grandmother and immediately offered her a look at his latest drawing. The woman took the album from the boy's hands, looked at the sketch indifferently, and asked Tony to leave him and his mother alone. The boy sighed disappointedly and complied with his grandmother's request. And as soon as Tony left the room, Casey immediately spoke up. "My finances are spent wisely. That's right, I live alone on my own salary, which is meager. You, on the other hand, spend your money on nothing. Barry's told me that a lot of money goes to Tony, like paints and brushes." "Barry told you that?" Lily asked in amazement. Casey realized she'd said too much, and then she spoke up. "He didn't. I didn't say what I thought I said. That's my purely personal opinion." "Wait, Mom, you don't have to go into reverse right away. You never just say anything. If you're so forthcoming with my husband, why don't you ask Barry for money for the trip? You don't want to help your mother, just say so." "I'm sorry, I'll talk to my husband today and ask for the money," Lily said dejectedly. She didn't feel like discussing it. When Barry came home, Lily told him her mother's request for money. The man replied with a smile that he would help his mother-in-law with the finances. The spouse nodded in response, and then she couldn't resist and asked, "Do you spend a lot of money on paints for Tony?" "Who told you that?" "My mom told me today. I don't know where she got it from, but she didn't." The man replied and then quickly turned the conversation to another direction. "What will my favorite wife feed me today?" Lily was not satisfied with her husband's answer, and she involuntarily thought about it. The woman and before noticed that the husband treats his son, not to say that indifferent, but not with love. Lily would have continued to think about it, but she was distracted by Barry, who repeated his question about dinner. She replied that she had made pilaf. A few more years passed. Tony was already in his 18th year, and he met a girl named Lucy on the internet. She was also interested in watercolor painting. Lucy became a frequent visitor to Barry's apartment. Lily welcomed her son's friendship with this girl, but the head of the family disapproved of Lucy's visits. This fact did not escape the wife, and she asked her husband, "Why are you against this girl coming to us?" As you do not realize, this person cannot wait to get Tony to get hold of his money. Lucy's a beautiful girl. Why do you think she wants a handicapped guy? How can you say that about Tony? Lily said indignantly and then continued. Yes, he can't walk, but you can't call him an invalid. And you can't think that Lucy is coming here to get your millions. After these words, Lily grabbed her head and moaned. The man at the same moment approached his spouse and asked him pathetically, "Are you having headaches again? I am something quite bad," and the eyes darkened. "How many times have I told you lately to go to the doctor?" Concerned, said the man, and wanted to continue talking, as at the same moment the woman began to fall. Barry picked up his wife in his arms and laid her gently on the sofa. After that, he called an ambulance, and soon the unconscious woman was hospitalized. Lily regained consciousness in the middle of the night. She looked around and realized that she was in the intensive care unit. The woman wanted to get up as a nurse rushed to her. She said that it was necessary to lie down. Lily inquired how long they had been here. The girl in the white coat answered and then mouthed that all other questions would be answered by the doctor who would come in the morning. Barry came to the hospital in the morning. He went straight to the doctor and asked the question that worried him. What was wrong with his wife? The doctor replied that this would be known in a few days, and then added Barry could visit his wife as she had been moved to a ward. The visitor thanked the doctor and hurried to White's room. Barry sat beside his wife and gently stroked her arm. Lily asked what had happened to her. The man answered with a wave of his hands and said that the doctors could not say anything. The woman asked how her son was at home and looked anxiously at her husband. He said that everything was fine at home. Several days passed. There were rounds of the sick. Lily waited impatiently for the attending physician, and when he appeared, she immediately asked for a diagnosis. The man in the white coat looked at the woman and said, "Do you always demand answers to your questions so categorically?" "In rare cases, and at this moment, it is just such a case, and please tell the truth." "Well, I'll be honest with you, we're discharging you today. I've already spoken to your husband. Your diagnosis is cancer, but it's not a verdict that you should be thinking about the afterlife. I think I've answered all your questions." After the doctor's words, Lily closed her eyes. She was not frightened by her diagnosis, but simply thought that here was life gone. The woman didn't think about herself. Her thoughts were now occupied with her son. She imagined how Tony would live without her. Lily, without realizing it, for some reason was sure that there was not long left to live. She was distracted from her thoughts by her husband, who entered the room, and Barry said in a cheerful voice that he was taking her out of the hospital. Lily smiled and said that this was the first good news for today. Her husband frowned and said, "You already know your diagnosis." "Yes," calmly answered the chosen one. "Don't worry, my love, we will cure you. There are highly qualified doctors. So it's much more serious than the doctor told me. Let's put it all out in the open." Lily said with a smile, "I have nothing to say to you. I'm going to take you to the capital." When Lily arrived home, she again asked her husband to tell her the truth about the state of her health. Barry tried to change the subject, but the woman did not retreat. The husband was silent for a long time and then said that the doctors who work here cannot help because there is no suitable equipment. That's why he was going to go to Washington. Lily at the same moment asked, "What about Tony being alone?" "Once again, you're worrying about your son instead of yourself. I'll hire a housekeeper for that period." Hiding his irritation, the man said. Lily caught a note of dissatisfaction in her husband's answer, and the woman again involuntarily thought about the fate of her son. She was worried about Tony, that he would have a hard life when she was gone. But Lily did not speak these thoughts aloud. Soon Barry took his wife to the capital's clinic. Lily lay for some time, and she was discharged. The woman already realized that the doctors could not help her. Lily was not told this, but she felt it by her state of health. When the woman was already at home, she decided that it was necessary to take care of the fate of her son. To do this, she called her spouse and told him that it was necessary to have a serious talk. Barry nodded in agreement and asked what the conversation would be about. Lily wrinkled her nose in pain and said, "I know I'm going to the other side of the world soon, and there's no need to deny it. I'd like you to transfer at least some of the finances you have to Tony. I realize you couldn't love my son like you love yours. Still, I'm gonna ask you to take care of him. He has no one else but me, and soon he won't have that either. Grandma doesn't need him, so you're the only one left. If you refuse, Tony's only way out is in a home for the handicapped. You can consider it your dying wife's last wish that you take care of Tony in the future. You give me your manly word that you'll do my will. I'll transfer the funds tomorrow, and I give you my word I won't put Tony in a home for the disabled. But you have to promise me you'll stop thinking you're gonna die. We'll make a barter deal with you right now, I'll pay." "Okay," the wife said with a smile and closed her eyes exhaustively. The man went out of the bedroom into the hall. He was unbearably hurt by the fact that the woman he loved was fading away right before his eyes, and he, Barry, was ready to give all the money he could to make Lily live longer. He realized that he would never love anyone the way he loved Lily. The head of the family went to the window as his adopted son approached him. Tommy inquired about his mother's condition, then asked why the doctors in Washington couldn't help. Barry sighed noisily and replied that he and his mom had gone to the medics too late. Tony, hearing his father's words, only asked, "How long does Mom have left to live?" "Lord knows, maybe a month, maybe a year." Sighing heavily, the man muttered. The next day, Lily called her son to talk to him. The woman said something to the boy for a long time, and he listened silently. And then the mother asked Tony to hug her, and then the young man could not stand it and sobbed on his mother's chest. The woman affectionately stroked her son's hair and asked him not to cry. Tony, by an effort of will, forced himself to pull himself together and stop crying. As soon as he did, Lily said, "I mean, you're a real man. What am I talking about, though? Because you're not 6 years old anymore, you're past 18. Know that I love you very much and always will, son. Live according to your conscience and don't hurt people." "Mom, it's like you're saying goodbye to me. Don't do that. Realize that I need you. Besides, I'm going to propose to Lucy, and I want you to be my date for the wedding." "Are you sure Lucy loves you?" "Mom, I can't answer your question because I haven't talked to her about it. And you talk, son, and now I'm tired. Let me rest a little," quietly said the woman and closed her eyes. Lily died 2 weeks after the conversation with her son. Her husband was with her at that moment, telling her how all three of them would go on vacation to the sea. Barry turned to his wife and was about to name the city they would be going to when he saw the woman smile and faintly say, "Thank you for everything. You are the best man." And after that, with a sigh of relief, she closed her eyes, never to open them again. The man at the same moment realized that his beloved woman was no longer in this world. He hugged the body and silently cried. Soon Lily was buried. The people were present at the funeral ceremony a little, since she did not communicate with anyone during her life. But even with a small number of people on the grave was laid a lot of wreaths and flowers. After Lily was gone, Barry hired a housekeeper for the woman to clean the house and help Tony in some situations. The man, widowed, tried to communicate with his adopted son as little as possible. Tony saw this and did not impose his presence. It had been a month since Lily had died, and Tony was waiting for his father to return. As soon as Barry appeared in the apartment, his stepson immediately said that he wanted to talk to him. The head of the family was not disposed to talk and told the young man so. However, Tony was persistent and said, "I perfectly understand that you are tired after work or from your business, but we will still talk. You told the housekeeper not to let Lucy in. May I ask why you did that?" "She's not your friend," Barry replied sternly. "It's your decision and you don't want my opinion. I'm of legal age and I have a say in this. So I'm asking you to stay out of my personal life. You're not going to question my decisions. If I say so, then so be it. And let's stop this pointless conversation," the man said irritably. "No, we're going to keep talking. Lucy is my girlfriend and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to propose to her." "Oh my God, you're blind. That girl needs your money, which I've wired to your account. You're a cripple, you realize that. And girls don't want guys like that. You don't get to decide my fate," stubbornly said the guy who wanted to defend his opinion. "That's it, this conversation is over," roughly said the man and quickly went into his bedroom and locked the door. Barry heard Tony banging on the door with his fist and demanding to continue the conversation. The landlord only responded by turning on the television and turning the sound up to full blast. Tony tried to talk to Barry for a few days after that, but his stepfather would lock himself in his bedroom. And once again, when his stepson broached the subject of Lucy, the man closed himself in his room as usual, took the photograph of his late wife in his hands, and suddenly cried silently. He spoke softly into the void. "My beloved Lily, you have given me an impossible task to look after Tony. The boy has already become a man. His physiology, as they say, his hormones have awakened. And I can't have Lucy running Tony around and then leaving him with nothing. You'll curse me to hell for not looking after the boy. By the way, his birthday's coming up soon, and I need to figure out what to get him." A few days flew by. Tony completely ignored his father, not answering even basic questions. The head of the family was annoyed by this circumstance, but he tried to keep calm and not to scandalize his stepson. Some more time passed. Barry came home in an inebriated state. He was tired of Tony ignoring him. The man went into his stepson's room and asked, "How much longer will this kind of communication go on?" The young man grinned and said, "You know the answer perfectly well yourself, so why ask? I'm tired of you not answering my simple questions. I'm actually talking to you. I'm interested in what you want me to give you for your birthday." Barry said and looked at his adopted son. "I want Lucy to come." Tony answered without thinking. "Maybe you should invite a tramp from the street too." Ironically asked the head of the family. "What is this idea? Pay the beggar for a night with me. At least rationally invest the money, or you help some cripple." Tony grinned and turned away, as if to make it clear that he was not going to talk about it anymore. Barry walked out of his son's room in anger. He could feel the anger inside him. He could not understand why his stepson would not understand that Lucy was not his equal, and he decided to teach his adopted son a lesson. Barry looked into Tony's room again and shouted loudly, "I'll bet you a beggar for your birthday. You can have a great time tomorrow. I'll find a beggar with whom I'll negotiate the price." "Thank you, Daddy, for the fancy present." Still with the same grin said the boy. It was Tony's birthday. He was quietly painting a spring landscape in his room with watercolors. The young man liked to create his masterpieces on this theme. He was distracted from his work by a knock on the door. The door opened, and his father stood on the threshold with a tramp behind him. Barry let the beggar go forward and, holding out his hand, said with delight, "Have fun. It's your birthday present. I hope she serves you well." "Thanks, Dad. I see you've already celebrated my birthday." Tony was being sarcastic. "Of course, it's a sin not to drink 100 grams for my son." The man replied loudly and then left the room, closing the door tightly behind him. Barry felt guilty after bringing the beggar and giving her to his son. It made him feel bad to realize that he had allowed such a gift to be overdone. But at the same moment, Barry forced himself to think of something else and immediately poured himself a 100 grams, which he drank in no time. When he got up in the morning, he felt a headache from last night's drinking. Barry grumbled annoyingly and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. At the same moment, he remembered that he had given Tony the beggar yesterday. The man got up and hurried to his foster son's room. He opened the door and immediately gasped as he saw Tony lying in Lucy's arms. Barry said confusedly, "How did she get here?" The young man, seeing the bewildered expression on the landlord's face, laughed, and only after a few minutes Tony was able to answer his father. "There is nothing to be surprised about, Father, knowing that you are a man who will not give in. I had to act on circumstances to outsmart you." "What do you mean, outsmart me?" Barry asked, still puzzled, and could not understand how Lucy could have gotten into their apartment, for he had locked the door himself at night. And the keys were only for him and the employee's house, who had been on vacation for 2 days. At this time, Lucy asked to explain the whole situation. The girl fixed a golden curl on her forehead and said, "Dear Barry, the whole thing is that I love Tony, and I do not need neither his nor your money. I am ready with Tony, as they say, to live in a hut, if only he was near. I can even tell you something else. I know you loved Lily a lot too. Now imagine if I felt the same way about your son. And as for how I ended up here, it's very simple. Tony called me and told me you wanted to give him a beggar for his birthday. I had a plan. I didn't know where you'd find this stray, and I had only one thing to do, to wait for this puppy on her birthday in your entrance, only a little higher up the stairs. When I saw this girl, I agreed to switch places with her, paying some more money for it. And then I put on old clothes, a wig, a little smeared face, and before you appeared a vagrant, to whom you opened the door. That's the secret of my appearance here." Barry listened attentively to the girl, then was silent for a while, and then laughed with relief. The man could not stop laughing for a long time. The young people were already beginning to worry that the owner of the apartment had gone mad. Tony wanted to ask the girl to bring water, as Barry stopped laughing and said hoarsely, "I wanted to teach you, son, to teach you a lesson, but it turns out that you spent me like a schoolboy. Well done, boys. I underestimated you, though, but I'm glad it turned out this way, because I was tormented by guilt for my deed. I want to apologize to you, son, for the way I treated you. I promised your mother that I would take care of you, but I did something stupid. And one more thing I will say, that I loved your mother and I continue to love her, and perhaps for this reason I did not always treat you well. And I'll explain why. I was very jealous of Lily for you and could do nothing about it, and now I realize that she loved me a little. And now, Lucy, I'm gonna turn to you. I'm sorry too, baby. I had my doubts about you, but it turns out you shouldn't have. You're a fighting girl, and Tony's lucky to be in love with such a selfless person. Now I know you two deserve each other and you'll make a strong family. I hope you'll invite me to the wedding. The young men looked at each other after Barry's words and both nodded happily. Then Tony turned to his father. He asked his dad to sit down initially and then looked at him carefully and said softly, "Since today is confession day, I want to tell you, Father, that before Mom died, she had a conversation with me. You don't know about this conversation. Mom told me that if I wanted to, I could tell you about that conversation later. So she honestly told me that you are not my own person and why she married you. Mom said that for many years could not love you, and only when she found out about her illness, she realized that she loved you and you are the best man in her life. And for me, you will always remain a real father, even though sometimes we did not find common ground. Son, you don't know how happy you made me with your words. You told me that your mom loves me. How long I waited for these words from her, and I waited when Lily is already in heaven and my son said it to me." With tears in his eyes, said the man, and at the same moment came to Tony and hugged him. At the same time, the girl was watching the whole scene. She too wept and said, "It seems to me that it is time to end the morning of revelations and start a new life, where there will be no more lies and secrets. And I, as Barry's future daughter-in-law, propose to fire the housekeeper, as I will now take her place, if the landlord doesn't mind. Lucy, you're going to own this place right this minute. I vote in favor of the motion with all my hands. Maybe it's time we all celebrated together," said Barry excitedly. The young people took up the idea of the landlord, and soon the family was sitting at the table and discussing where they would celebrate the wedding. Barry told the young people at once that he wanted the wedding to be lavish and to be attended by many people. Tony and Lucy listened to the man and chuckled. Barry looked at the couple and said, perplexed, "Why are you laughing?" "It's just interesting to hear you talk about a wedding you didn't want to get married recently," Tony said with a laugh. "It was a long time ago and not true," Barry replied with a smile. And after these words of the owner, everyone in the apartment laughed and then began to congratulate each other that everything had been solved well, and each of them gave their word that they would not keep anything from the others.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.